The Peter Principle by Laurence J. Peter. First things first. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. Assuming enough time and ranks, each employee rises to their personal level of incompetence and remains there. After a certain period of time, every position is filled by an employee who is unable to fulfill the task. The work is done by those who have not yet reached their level of incompetence. Professional incompetence is everywhere, and almost everyone has noticed it. It is particularly evident in politicians because they are in the spotlight. Canadian psychologist Laurence J. Peter discovered the Peter Principle, named after him, by observing various cases of incompetence, and at some point he realized that they all have something in common. All the employees had been promoted from a position for which they had the required aptitude to a position for which they were unsuited. For example, Mr. Tinker was exceptionally zealous and intelligent as an apprentice at an auto repair company and soon rose to journeyman mechanic. In his job, he showed outstanding ability in diagnosing obscure faults and endless patience in correcting them. He was promoted to foreman of the repair shop. But here his love of mechanical things and his perfectionism become liabilities. He will undertake any job that he thinks looks interesting, no matter how busy the shop may be. He will not let the job go until he is fully satisfied with it. He meddles constantly. He is seldom to be found at his desk. He is usually up to his elbows in a dismantled engine, and while the man who should be doing the work stands watching, other workmen sit around waiting to be assigned new tasks. As a result, the shop is always overcrowded with work, always in a muddle, and delivery times are often missed. Tinker cannot understand that the average customer cares little about perfection. He wants his car back on time. He cannot understand that most of his men are less interested in motors than in their paychecks. So Tinker cannot get on with the customers or with his subordinates. He was a competent mechanic, but is now an incompetent foreman. Sooner or later, this happens to every member of a hierarchy, and he reaches his level of incompetence. It follows from this, after a certain time, every position is filled by an employee who is incapable of fulfilling their task, however much they may want to. Since in most systems, not all employees have reached their level of incompetence, the work is done by those who have not yet reached this stage. It is important to know that most employees have the desire to be productive. Incompetence has nothing to do with unwillingness. For example, the senior executive of a major company has risen to a position of CEO. Now, however, his health was taking a turn for the worse and he was suffering from high blood pressure and peptic ulcers. The company physician recommended that he slow down and learn to relax. The board of directors recommended that an assistant general manager be appointed to relieve him of some of its strain. Although both of those recommendations were well-intentioned, they failed to deal with the cause of the problem. The doctor advised him to relax more, and the supervisory board wanted to appoint a deputy to relieve him. These were well-intentioned ideas, but they missed the point. The new CEO had been promoted beyond his physiological competence, as he had to deal with conflicting goals, generating profits to satisfy the shareholders, securing the favor of the customers, keeping the employees in line, and fulfilling certain social and family responsibilities. Incompetent people almost always have the desire to perform, but they simply can't do it once they have reached their level of incompetence. They often even compensate for this with increased activity and occasionally even believe that they can achieve something. Sooner or later, however, they realize their unproductivity and suffer as a result. Would self-recognition that they have reached the end of their career help? Those affected often believe that they themselves are not responsible for their situation, which is actually true, because nobody created himself and his limitations. However, they blame others or simplify things. The promotion is not recognized as the cause of the professional failure. Incapacity often appears in the form of physical incapacity, lack of talent for leadership, emotional or mental incapacity. Attempts are often made to somehow get rid of the people who have reached a level of incapacity. One technique is percussive sublimation. People fall up the stairs, that is, they are promoted just to get rid of them. Another technique is the lateral arabesque. An incompetent employee is given a new title and a new job in a remote corner of the building or even outside, but without an official promotion or pay rise. Another phenomenon of incompetence is professional automation. Above all, small civil servants and employees without decision-making powers who are obsessed with ensuring that forms are filled out correctly or that pointless rules are adhered to. From the customer's or victim's point of view, someone like this is incompetent, but not from the point of view of the superior within the hierarchy, if the latter has already reached his level of incompetence. Normally, the output or performance of the employee would be assessed, that is, the result of the work. However, a boss who has already reached his own level of incompetence will tend to evaluate his employee from a bureaucratic point of view, that is, to what extent he follows orders, respects official rituals, honors forms, and so on. The internal paperwork then becomes more important than any business success. How can you avoid reaching your level of incompetence? By foregoing promotions. It would also be possible to be demoted when you realize that you have reached your level of incompetence, but this is not welcome in a hierarchy. Another possible solution to avoid promotions, which Peter does not mention, would be to change jobs. Occasionally, a first-class employee is dismissed because he or she is too successful. Peter calls this hierarchical exfoliation. Because supercompetence is more dangerous than simple incompetence. It poses a threat to the hierarchy. Simple incompetence does not. The highest commandment of a hierarchy is the hierarchy must be maintained at all costs. However, both extremely competent and extremely incompetent employees jeopardize the system. Consequently, they are dismissed. Peter calls this hierarchical exclusion. The paternal instinct should also be mentioned in this context. When the successor of a company owner, often the son, immediately takes over the management of the company without first having earned merits at the lower levels. In some hierarchies, there are people who have not been able to reach their level of incapacity, for example, because there are not enough hierarchy levels. These people then often try to move laterally into another hierarchy. Peter calls them the peak performers. Reaching the final stage of incapacity is often associated with health problems. Peter calls this the final placement syndrome. This includes a whole range of illnesses from stomach ulcers and high blood pressure to alcoholism and allergies. Peter cites the example of a manager who gets migraine attacks before every board meeting, or another manager who is no longer told bad news because of his heart disease. Medical treatments usually focus on the symptom. The actual cause, the final placement, is not recognized. However, there are some cases in which people in final placement boast about their illnesses because they see them as a sign of their success. The illness becomes a status symbol for them. The only known elevation of health problems associated with final placement is to direct the interest of the person concerned to an area in which they can still achieve something. For example, a manager is advised by his doctor to play golf. From then on, he spends more time on the golf course than in his company and becomes a pretty good golfer. His health problems diminish. Someone else runs the company. Substitute behavior is the most satisfying way to come to terms with the end of your career. This way, you stay healthy and happy until you retire.